this video, I would like to talk about how to improve your communication skills. Communication is everything. Communication is the key to personal and career success. And everything we want to achieve in life, whether it's in our personal lives or in our professional life, has to do with some sort of communication. It is important that you learn everything there is to know about communication, and all very famous or successful people are very good communicators because they have learned to present themselves in the best possible way. There are 3 different rules that you should know or be aware of when you're dealing with other people. Number 1 is avoid criticism and judgment. People don't like to get criticized. No one likes critical people, okay? So even if you, let's say, win the argument with another person, you lose the person, okay? So you don't want necessarily to be constantly criticizing other people and judge other people because no one likes to be around that. So you're losing friends. The second is to give lots of praise and recognition because people are starving for praise and recognition like they need air to breathe. So often at home, with their wives, with their children, at work and so forth, people don't get the kind of recognition that they feel that they deserve. So you can improve your communication skills by giving out lots of praise and recognition. And the third factor is to encourage and motivate other people. To encourage other people, to motivate them to say, hey, go for it. I will make them feel better. And it's always about the energy. So if you have a positive interaction with someone else and the energy is positive, it will improve your communication. You see, intelligence and knowledge or experience are important if you want to get a job, but strong communication skills is what will get you promoted. There are a few ways how you get people to like you by building rapport and likability. And there are 6 ways. Number 1 is to show an interest in other people. Then number 2 is to be happy and be a smiling person yourself. Number 3 is to use the other person's name often. Number 4 is to be a good listener. And number 5 is to talk about the other person's interest, not your own. And number 6 is to increase someone else's self-confidence by encouraging or motivate them or giving them praise. You see, you cannot really win an argument because if you try to convince another person and you say you are wrong, then basically you might have all the arguments, but you will lose the fight or you will lose the person. And that's what you want to avoid. So the only way to win an argument or a fight is to avoid it. Now, but how should you go about if you have a different opinion or you want to help someone else to get a better opinion? For example, someone says, your product is way too expensive and that's why I don't want it. Okay, so let's say someone says that to you. And instead of saying, no, that's a wrong way, I always never say no, so to speak, you're going to go or going to be confrontational. And being confrontational is not going to help. So what you need to do is you need to say, well, you're absolutely right. I totally agree with you. If I were in your shoes, I would say exactly the same thing. I can understand where you're coming from. So what have you done? At this point, you've brought him from a negative place to a neutral place, okay? And that's all you have to do as a first step. Now, the next step is assuming that there was a good reason why the product is more expensive than the ones from the competition, but it would save you money in the end. Would you be willing to at least have a look at it for yourself? And then he says, well, okay. So at least now you open him. So first you bring him from a negative place to a neutral place, and then you open him with a hypothetical question so that at least he's willing, okay? He's willing to, look at your product or, check out what you have to offer. You see, You cannot insult people and think you can get your way, or you can threaten them or disrespect them and then think they will do something for you. Okay? So sometimes people who work in customer service, especially let's say at an airline counter, they often get angry people because something went wrong with the flight and so forth. And those angry people try to yell at them and try to get their way, but in reality, they're not getting anywhere. So you need to always try it with friendliness. And if you want something, obviously use common sense. Also put yourself in the other person's shoes and say, hey, I know you're just doing your job, but this is what happened. And if you use friendliness, if you smile, if you're a nice person, and you ask, and you always ask, hey, can you make an exception? But you're really nice and sweet. You know what? Maybe then they will make an exception. But if you come with an angry, criticizing kind of tone, you're not getting anywhere. Now, let's say you want to change someone's behavior. And basically, you need to criticize them so that they will, do something different. But you don't want to offend them. Okay, so how do you go about that? Well, you should always start with praise and recognition first. And if the other person has made a mistake, never point it out directly. Never say, oh, you did this wrong, and so forth. And by the way, never criticize the person. Never say, you're an idiot or you're an asshole. Always criticize the behavior. Let's say, oh, this action or what you did there wasn't, so never, that's an important factor. But also, obviously, the best way is not to call him out straight on what he has done, but to indirectly maybe talk about your own mistakes first before you criticize the other person. And then the person will get, oh, shoot, maybe I shouldn't do that. Let's say you're the boss. You walk into the kitchen, and let's say there's dishes everywhere. And instead of saying to the employee, hey, you know what, you should really, wash the dishes, and this is a big mess, and what the hell are you thinking, and so forth, you should say, oh my God, I left those dishes out there. It's such a mess. I should really clean it up. So you give the other person the opportunity to react without actually offending them. And then they say, oh, no, sorry, it was me. I'll take care of it. So that way he got the message and you didn't have to offend him. Also, let's say you're in a situation where you're in a group situation and something went wrong and you need to point out that somebody did something wrong. However, if you criticize someone in front of the whole group, he will lose his face, okay? And you want to avoid that. You need to make sure that people can always save face. So they save their face. So they will thank you later for it, okay? So if somebody did something wrong, never point it out directly. Just make sure that you never offend anyone in front of other people. And the person who did something wrong, they will change their behavior or maybe come to you afterwards and they will thank you for not criticizing them in front of everyone. Remember, great people don't put others down. So if you have to criticize someone, okay, remember, criticism can be the biggest killer in someone's motivation. It can destroy relationships. It can destroy everything. So be very careful how and when you use criticism. Now, as I said, number one, don't criticize the person, criticize the behavior. Number two, never criticize anyone in front of other people. Always only two sets of eyes, okay? And then also ask yourself, what is the goal of your criticism? Do you just want to get your message across and you want to show them who's boss, or you feel like your authority has been challenged? So ask yourself, is it really necessary and is it really kind? And maybe it's not necessary and maybe it's not kind, so just let it be, okay? Or also, when you criticize someone's behavior, immediately it needs to be followed by positive compliment, positive reinforcement or encouragement of better behavior. For example, you could say, when you did this, this was really not okay. However, usually you're such a great person. Usually you do such a great job. I wish in the future, we can go back to how you normally act. And that way you criticize the action, but immediately you point out the positive qualities of someone else, and that way you don't create a person who doesn't like you. Remember, listening is a key skill in communication. There's only one really rule for being a good talker. It's to learn to listen. So in a conversation, you should be asking lots of questions and be listening about 70% of the time. Only 30% is for asking questions about the other person. So often you have a conversation with someone and you ask lots of questions and you ask him about the hobbies and his opinion and this and that, and you don't really say anything about yourself. You only show interest in the other person by asking questions and by listening. And after, the person will say, wow, this was a great communication. This was a great conversation. And he will say, wow, the other person is really nice. But in effect, you haven't really said much, okay? So you just asked the right questions, you showed interest, and you were listening. But that makes all the difference between a good conversation and a bad conversation. Remember, there's a rule when it comes to sales or communication. It's called the one who's asking questions is leading the conversation. So if you're constantly answering questions, then the other person has the lead. But if you are the one asking questions, then you can lead the conversation in the direction that you want. And sometimes someone asks you a question, and instead of giving an answer, you just counter with a counter question. Okay? So often you don't want to answer certain things, you can just give it back to the person. And you get back the control over what's being talked about and what the content of your conversation is. Remember, there is intelligence like an IQ, and then there is emotional intelligence like an EQ. And when you talk to someone, you also need to listen and read between the lines. So you need to understand what has not been said, or what was the other person's intention, or what was the other person's energy. So someone can say something, but in reality, the energy or how they came across wasn't really what they meant. So it's important also not just to listen to the word, but to examine what the other person, how the other person was really feeling. Okay, so emotional intelligence is a key skill in becoming a good communicator, and building relationships and having emotional intelligence is what you need to focus on. Language matters. The words that you choose matter. How you say something matters, okay? Remember, words have the power to start wars, okay? If you insult other people with the wrong language, with words and so forth, it can have consequences that can be potentially really bad. So you can have good words or the right kind of conversation, and you can build someone up, and you can change the outcome of a situation. So you can change your world by changing your words, okay? So how you say something matters, okay? If you have relationship problems with your partner, for example, be kinder, use kinder words, because maybe you're just using the wrong language. Well, maybe you've heard of NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And basically it means that you try to mirror the other person by being similar. Let's say the way you look, the way you act, the tone of your voice, the speed of your voice, and so forth, to build more rapport, which leads to more trust, okay? So we as humans, we like people who are similar to us. And if we have someone who's similar to us, and the body language is similar, and the voice and everything, then we tend to like and trust that person more. So if you talk to someone, you need to try to mirror his conversation, how he's talking, how he's behaving. And if you are similar in your behavior to the other person, automatically the other person will like you more and trust you more. Also, um, even if you're smart and well educated, you still should communicate in the language of the common people, okay? So explain everything in such a way that a 10-year-old child would understand it. By doing things or explaining things in a simple way and not being overly complicated, um, you will gain the trust of the other person. And I told you maybe earlier about the cleaning lady test. So an important CEO used to make the cleaning lady test, which means before an important shareholder meeting, he would do the presentation to his cleaning lady, and if the cleaning lady understood what he was trying to say, then he would use that presentation. If not, he had to simplify it and rework it because it was too complicated. Also, when it comes to communication, you should always be respectful and polite. You should always show class and have composure, no matter what the other person says or does, okay? Basically, when people get disrespectful, okay, it's not something where you should react to because it's a reflection of their character and not your character. If someone insults you or criticizes you, don't get angry and try to hurt them back with even worse statements or words. Always keep your composure and always keep your class. And just remember, whatever another person says to you has nothing to do with reality or the truth. It's coming from that person. It's that person's problem or point of view. And you should always keep your class and communicate with respect no matter what the other person does or says. Also understand that people are different than you. There are four basic personality types. There is the red type, who is a little bit more dominant, loud, or dynamic, and they like confrontation, okay? They like money, recognition, status, and power. And sometimes they like challenges and competition. So that person has a different energy than, let's say, the blue type, which is more rational and facts-oriented, and who needs information, statistics, numbers, and so forth, who likes to analyze things and go into detail. Or that person is different than the green person who likes to focus on relationship, who is nice, friendly, likes to talk about past stories, and who is really likable and likes to be in good company and in friends. So that person is different than the yellow type. And the yellow type wants to be special and different from everybody else. He's very innovative, communicative. He likes being creative, and he likes to be basically different than the rest. So there's no good or bad personality structure, but I'm sure you've met different kind of people where some people, they always keep hitting the heads at the wall, and other people who are typical, analytical people, numbers people, and usually those two kind of people don't go well together. So once you understand what kind of person is in front of you, you can adjust your language a little bit, okay? So you can motivate people in a different way. So a numbers guy, I can't motivate him with rah, 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 just go for it and let's see what happens. With a numbers person, I need to come with facts, with figures, with analysis, so to speak. And with the green guy who's, friendly and nice and likes to talk a lot and so forth, I can't just say, let's just shut up, let's just go for it and so forth. I have to be nice and friendly back. And the red type, I can't talk to the red guy and bore him with unnecessary details because I'm going to lose his attention span. So understand who is in front of you and learn the personality types. And once you know that, adjust your way or your style or your communication to the person who you're dealing with. Also, clothes and manners do not make the man, but when he is made, it greatly improves his performance or appearance. So dress for success. The way you look or the way you deal with clients is important, because if you have messy hair or if you're not shaved or you don't have a nice suit and so forth, your success depends on the first impression that people get from you, okay? So you can never, let's say, overdress. So it's better to overdress than be underdressed, because clothes are important and the way you dress is important. Also, maybe if you have a nice watch, I don't have a watch, but let's say if you have a nice watch, it gets people's attention. So however you present yourself is basically a statement of, I care about myself, I care, how I come across, and it will give you more credibility, more trust, and so forth. And especially in sales, it's very, very important. Also, let's say you're in a relationship and something bothers you, or you feel mistreated or unhappy. And the way to communicate it is like this. You can always say something like, I feel like, or this made me feel that so and so. Instead of saying, you're an idiot, you're mean, and so forth. So instead of using that kind of language, you can always get it back to you and say, this made me feel like, okay? Or in this situation, I felt that, and so forth. So nobody can make you, judge you for the way you feel. It's just, you have no choice how you feel. But that's how you can communicate to improve your relationship. Ask your way to success. So in life, sometimes the simple act of asking a question can change everything. Sometimes asking for the promotion, asking for a date, asking if the person will work for you, and so forth. Whatever it is, don't be afraid to ask. Have the courage to ask. Even if it's a critical situation, ask, 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 and I can tell you, it will change your life. And finally, I want to encourage you to read the book How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I've mentioned it in some of the other videos too, but that is the book that changed my life forever. That was responsible for my success in my sales career. It changed my personal relationship. It changed everything. So if you haven't read it yet, it's a classic. It's from the 1930s, and everything that's written in there is still valid today, and it will change your life. I promise you that. So read the book How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.